Hey family, look, in case you miss our in-person worship service today, let me tell you that we had an amazing time at Grace House Church. I am so honored and blessed to lead such an amazing church, and to see what God is doing every single Sunday is literally blowing our minds. But I wanted to jump on here to share with you a few sermon notes, a few things that we talked about today in case that you miss our in-person worship service. We talked from a subject of get to the exit sign. We really dealt with temptation. We talked about temptation from the standpoint of understanding that there's no graduation. I know we're in a graduation season now, but you never graduate from being tempted. As long as you are on this earth, as long as you are human, as long as you're wrapped up in this flesh, you, just like me and others, will deal with temptation. Now understand this, temptation is not just limited exclusively to those things that are explicit, but others, like some of us who are probably, even you're watching this, you're tempted to do other things. Like you're tempted to be a part of gossip, tempted to be a part of the latest tea, tempted to lie, tempted to demonstrate anger, maybe even curse someone out that has made you upset, or just tempted to do the opposite of what God has called and created you to do because of fear, or because you just feel like you're inadequate. Whatever level or area that you're tempted in, what's important is how you manage it. That's the biggest thing. How you manage it is important. And understand this, that according to the scripture that we read today, anytime you're dealing with temptation, there's going to always be an exit sign. There's always going to be a way out. In fact, the scripture that we read today was 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. I'll be reading that out of the New Living Translation of the Bible. It says, the temptations in your life are no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, he will show you a way out so that you can endure. Another point that we tried to drive home today was understand this, that when you're dealing with temptation, understand that God is not tempting you. And I know you probably heard some people say that God is tempting me. He's trying to make me stronger. He's trying to make me better. But that's unbiblical. God is not tempting you. In fact, the scripture we read to confirm that is James chapter 1, verse 13 through 15 out of the New Living Translation of the Bible. It says, and remember, when you are being tempted, do not say, God is tempting me. God is never tempted to do wrong, and he never tempts anyone else. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. And this death we talked about is really what we look at is not necessarily focused on a physical death, but a spiritual death, a separation between you and God. But you have to be honest. If you are being tempted right now, it's not anything that God is sending your way, but it's something that you desire yourself. So the question I got to ask you is, what do you really desire? And if you don't know what you desire, then look at the areas in your life of where you're being tempted. There's something in your life that you're desiring that's against the will of God. But understand this, is that when you're being tempted, know that there's always a way for you to escape. There's always an exit sign. And my prayer for you this week, as you're facing any level of temptation in your life, where it's a temptation to get back at them, to prove your point, to make them feel the way that you feel, whatever you've been tempted in, understand this, is that there's always an exit sign. And I pray this week that those exit signs become brighter in your life. But not only do they become brighter, I pray that you have the strength, the boldness, and the courage to walk toward the exit sign instead of walking toward the temptation. And understand this, if maybe you walked toward the temptation this week, you made some mistakes, you've fallen, understand this, man, you can get back up. You can dust yourself off. You can get yourself cleaned up, and you can start all over. But understand, starting over with God is important. And I shared one point at the end of service is that you got to understand what you feed the most grows the most. And if you are feeding your flesh and your fleshly desires the most, that's what's going to grow the most. But maybe you're like me, you say, look, I've been wanting to feed, I need to feed my spirit the most because I can't keep allowing myself to keep yielding over to temptations in life. I want to become closer and closer to God. Understand this, the only way that that happens is one, by spending time in his word, praying and reading. But the other thing is making sure that you're surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, people who are on a journey with you, who are trying to get closer to God, and make sure that the advice that you're even receiving is biblical advice and not advice that's based upon a worldly perspective or worldly thoughts and opinions. Understand this, that you can have the boldness and the courage to resist temptation in whatever area of your life you may be tempted in. And again, understand this. Temptation is not just limited exclusively to those things that are explicit, but understand this, is that temptation can be in any area of your life, but understand that God did not send it. If it's come out from our own desires. And my prayer is that God cleans and purifies our hearts so that our desires line up with his will for our lives. Look,